Good evening to you, Professor Jen, writing seminar, writing about love, sex, and intimacy, week number 3. Good evening to you again. Thank you for joining me in our lecturecast. Tonight we're going to discuss a few things, which I will post again tomorrow here for you in our virtual classroom. But now I want to just review a few things with you. There were several assignments given to the class that were due this coming Thursday night. I really enjoy reading the questions that I've asked you. Let's review. I assigned half of you MLA style, the other half APA style. These two styles are extremely important, especially when it's going to come down to writing the literary reviews and, of course, your research paper. I also ask you questions throughout the course in chat for the purpose of getting you used to the exercise in writing. I'm so impressed with the kind of writing that I'm receiving from most of you. The literary review is going to be due for me on April 1st, which is a Monday. So that's going to be a nice amount of time for you to cover this. The literary review is going to cover a particular topic that has to do with love, sex, and intimacy. It will be 2 to 3 pages long. It will be sent to me in my Dropbox. What I would like you to focus on is a particular topic in love, sex, and intimacy that has to do with any of the readings from the text that we're using in the class about love stories. I would then like you to reference one of the films that you have viewed like I asked you to do by week number 4. I would like you to pick a topic of your choice as it relates to love, sex, and intimacy and discuss in the 2 to 3 pages, along with a story that you've read from the text that we're using in the class, a topic of your choosing. That's the assignment. Also, next week, you should be prepared to start hammering down what it is about love, sex, and intimacy that you would like to research, as you're going to spend a considerable period of time doing that for this particular class, writing seminar. So that's what I'm looking for. I've just given you the assignment, literary review, due April 1. I've given you the topic. I'll remind you tomorrow. Again, I'll repeat it, you're going to use one film that you've viewed, that I asked you to view, and you're going to use a particular story that you've read in the book that I've assigned for this class, the text that has the love stories, any story of your choosing. I want you, in 2 to 3 pages, take a position on how these pieces of media and material relate to love, sex, and intimacy. You should have some sense on how to quote now that I've asked you to define MLA or APA format. I would prefer that you use MLA format. If you're not familiar with that, go back into the chat room and you'll see that some of your classmates have put it up for you how to use MLA format, as you'll be graded for using quoting format and relative and relevant citations. Tonight I want to talk a little in our lecture cast as a subject matter about love and sorrow. I'm going to give you a few little stories and examples of things that I think are really pertinent and important to this subject matter. I guess before we continue, I'd like to thank Captioning Services for providing the captioning that we're enjoying this evening. Let's talk about love as sorrow, having to say goodbye. Last night I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about pets and saying goodbye. And we were talking about relationships and having to say goodbye. And sometimes we really do have to shut the door on certain relationships because either they're toxic, or they're not working for us, or we've outgrown them. I was relaying a story to this friend of mine last night here at the house about this dog we used to have. and her name was Casey, big Irish setter, and we had adopted her when she was in the senior citizen part of her life. When we had gotten her, she was about 12 years old, we think. And apparently, she had run away from her previous owner's house many times, and they were just sick of dealing with it, so they put her up for adoption. And as you're probably aware, it's not often that people wish to adopt elderly dogs and dogs that are really on their way out, because you really can't have much of a relationship with them because they don't have a lot of time left. But we took Casey anyway, and she came to live with us. And within a short period of time, I figured out that Casey didn't like me, but she certainly liked my husband, Ted. Big Irish setter and about, oh, maybe 100 pounds. And in fact, she would jump all over my feet and basically trample all over me and whoever else was in her way in order to get to Ted. He was the star of her show. The day before Casey had passed away, I could tell that she was in distress and there was really not much we could do for her. So I had put a pillow on the floor next to the bed on the side which my husband slept on. And I could see that we were preparing to say goodbye as her breathing became more shallow and she just wasn't eating, and I saw that this was the end of our relationship. I really didn't particularly like the dog. I did not like the dog. There's a double negative there. She was really my husband's dog. Anyway, he went to bed, Casey went to bed on the floor on her pillow, and I went to bed on my side. In the middle of the night, I felt this hot breath right over here in the front of my nose on my side of the bed. And who was it? Casey. She came over from her pillow, I guess to alert me that she just didn't want to go alone. I got out of the bed. I walked over to her little pillow. She got herself back on her pillow, and I laid down next to her. And her breathing became more and more shallow, and I could see she was struggling. And then finally, about a half hour later, she passed away right there. And I was there with her, with my head near hers, and that was the end. As the morning came, roughly 6:30 in the morning, my husband got up and I said, Ted, I have something to tell you. And he said, what? I said, Casey's gone. She died. She died about an hour ago. And he looked really shocked and sad. Just goes to show that even a pet knows how to protect who it is that they love. Here it is that Casey really thought of Ted as her favorite, yet when it came down to the end of her life, maybe she was protecting him, and she didn't want him to see that she was expiring, so she came and got me to handle the dirty work. Regardless, she didn't want to die alone. I was prepared to just go to sleep that night and wake up the next morning with Casey there. Love can be full of sorrow. I'll give you another example of love and sorrow. Sometimes we have to say goodbye to people in our lives, though we don't want to. Either it's just time for them to go permanently, psychologically, or emotionally, and it's not easy being the one left behind. Sometimes we have to say goodbye to people as well, even temporarily. I think of people in the military. I think of people that travel overseas, go to school overseas. I think about the times when your mother said goodbye to you or your father said goodbye to you the first time you left for college. It's a temporary goodbye, but it's love that's filled with sorrow. It's not so easy. Now, I'll tell you where I think love can be very joyful. Really, really joyful. Not filled with sorrow. Sometimes some disappointment, but not sorrow. Sometimes you can really love something or love a place that just brings you immense amounts of joy. Joy in the smallest things. I had this friend, Frank, that I worked with for many years when I ran an outreach center. And he and I would talk every day. And at the end of his life, he was really full of joy. He was 84 years old, lived a very full life. And he did everything the doctors told him to watch his cholesterol, to watch his cigarette smoking, which he didn't, not drink. And at the end of his life, he was given so many weeks in which to live. I said, Frank, what can I do for you now that we're facing the end? He said, I'll tell you what you can do for me. I would like a cigar, I'd like some chicken skin, and every week I would like to eat a new pie that's filled with cholesterol, and then we'll spend the rest of the week discussing why that pie was the better pie from the week before. So that's what we did. Towards the end of Frank's life, we used to pack everything up, go 10 minutes down the street. One week we had a key lime pie, the next week we had a coconut cream pie, followed by a chocolate pie, and we'd spend our time talking about which pie was better than the other pie, and why that is. It seemed like a much better discussion than the finality of our relationship and the fact that he was going to die. There was a lot of joy in those times. I watched him smoke his cigar, and I remember I had this crazy doctor that came to see me, and he said, you know, your friend Frank really shouldn't be smoking those cigars. They're going to kill him. I laughed at this doctor. I said, are you crazy? The cancer's killing him. Let him have a cigar. Another place I think about love is a very joyful place, is when you can literally love somebody else that isn't yours. I don't mean in a sexual relationship, and I don't mean in an intimate relationship among equals. I mean the adoption of a child or a foster parent. Somebody that can take somebody else's child with their history, their health conditions, and say, you know, you're not prepared to raise them, help them, foster them, but I'll take your child for you. Boy, that's love. And full of joy. And some sorrow. But the sorrow is worth it. What I would like you to do is I would like you, for the purpose of our chat, after you've seen this lecturecast, is I would like you to get a taste of what it is to love somebody else that isn't yours. Please go to my website, www.paperbagladies.org, and look up the article that talks about the Brighton couple that adopts a boy. I'd like you to read the article, but then I want you to go out to the internet, another one of our virtual tours, so to speak, and I would like you, no later than next Tuesday night, to find an article about people who love other people's children and sometimes either get to keep them or have to give them back, or have to give them to another family member after they've loved them and made this investment. How much joy people get in loving somebody else's child, yet the sorrow of having to give them back or away. So, let's recap. By next Tuesday, I would like you to have gone to my website, which is also in the syllabus. And I would like you to look up the article. I'll repeat again for you, www.paperbagladies, paperbagladies.org, and look up the article about Brighton couple adopts baby. Then, 2 steps. I'd like you to then go out into the virtual world and find an article about people who adopt other people or foster other people to love, and then sometimes get to keep them, or maybe have to give them back or away to somebody else. What does that kind of love feel like? A quick little invitation. Again, this Saturday night at Panera 12 Corners, 6 to 8 in Brighton, New York, I'll be hosting a meet and greet. So if you'd like to come meet me and discuss materials or articles or anything, please let me know. On Easter Sunday, at 6 o'clock p.m., I've invited all of my students, wherever they are, to come join us here at our home, 2500 Elmwood Avenue, to come and have dessert with Professor Jen and her crazy family. you're more than welcome. Also, in my writing seminar, in my Women in Crime and my seminar in sexual violence class, we're currently addressing something that had happened on campus with a sexual assault of a particular RIT student. And next Friday, Good Friday, we're collecting little words of encouragement, poems, anything people might like to write. They can send to me at jwolfley@yahoo.com. I'm going to enclose all of these good wishes to this person who suffered this horrible misfortune. This might be a good place to hone in on your writing skills. And I'm going to hand it over to public safety so they can anonymously deliver it to the person who suffered whatever it is that they suffered here on the campus. If you'd like to be part of that writing expedition, since we're a writing seminar class, please feel free to do so, as it's a way of showing support to the person who has suffered this attack. I wish you a very good evening. Always be well. Again, tomorrow night I'll post the assignments, but I do rely on these lecture casts for you to have the assignments as I verbally explain them to you. Good night, and I look forward to reading your writing.